It was a stormy evening when Emma found the tiny kitten huddled under a bush in her front yard. The wind howled through the trees and rain poured down in sheets, making the darkened street seem even more desolate. At first, she thought it was just a pile of leaves, but as she got closer, she saw the small bundle of fur, soaked to the bone and trembling in the corner. Her heart immediately softened. The kitten looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes, barely more than a few weeks old. Emma could feel her pulse quicken as she crouched down, careful not to startle him. She murmured softly, trying to calm the poor thing. Without thinking, she scooped the tiny creature into her arms, feeling the rapid beat of his little heart against her chest. He was so small, barely able to mew, but she could tell by the way he snuggled into her that he was in desperate need of love and safety. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered, her voice soothing. "You're safe now." With the storm raging around them, Emma took the kitten inside, wrapped him in a towel, and tried to dry him off. She quickly made him a cozy little bed in a small box and placed him near the warmth of the kitchen. Her two German shepherds, Rex and Luna, who were always gentle and curious, immediately approached the new arrival. They sniffed at him cautiously, their instincts aware of the delicate situation but also curious about the little creature who had appeared in their home. Rex, the older and more protective of the two dogs, seemed to take an instant liking to the kitten. He gave a soft woof, as if to say, "It's okay, little one. You're part of the pack now." Luna, younger and more playful, leaned over and licked the kitten's head gently, as though trying to comfort him as well. Emma watched in awe as the two dogs, who were used to being the center of attention, accepted the kitten without hesitation. The little kitten, still unsure of what was happening, looked up at the dogs with wide, confused eyes. He mewed softly and, after a moment of hesitation, crawled toward them, instinctively seeking the warmth and companionship they offered. It was the beginning of an unusual bond, a bond that would soon shape not only the kitten's life, but the lives of the two dogs as well. For the first few days, Emma kept a close eye on the kitten. She fed him warm milk and kept him comfortable, ensuring he was recovering from the ordeal. As she watched the bond between the kitten and the dogs grow stronger, she knew there was something extraordinary about this little creature, something she couldn't quite explain but felt in her heart. In the weeks that followed, Emma noticed something even more surprising. Milo, as she had decided to name the kitten, was beginning to act less like a typical cat and more like one of the dogs. It was as if, without realizing it, he had already found his place in the family, not just as a pet, but as a member of the pack. As the days passed, it became clear that Milo, the tiny kitten Emma had rescued, wasn't just adjusting to life in her home, he was becoming an integral part of it. But it wasn't just Emma who had taken a liking to the little ball of fur. Rex and Luna, her two German shepherds, were forming an unlikely bond with Milo as well. Rex, with his protective instincts, had taken to watching over Milo as if he were his own puppy. Luna, playful and affectionate, treated the kitten like one of her own. From the very start, Rex had acted like a father figure. Though he was a dog, he seemed to recognize Milo's vulnerability. Every time the kitten ventured too far from the safety of his little bed, Rex would nudge him gently back into the warmth, guiding him with his massive head. Rex never growled at Milo, never showed any signs of aggression. Instead, he showed a kind of patience that seemed instinctive. Luna, on the other hand, was much more enthusiastic. She would nudge Milo with her nose, urging him to chase after her as she darted around the yard. She would roll onto her back in front of him, inviting him to wrestle, always careful not to hurt him. Milo, despite being so tiny, accepted these playful advances without fear. At first, Milo would cower whenever Rex and Luna would playfully paw at him. He wasn't used to the roughhousing of the two dogs. But within days, something changed. He began to mimic their behavior. Whenever Luna ran circles around the yard, Milo would stumble after her, trying his best to keep up. When Rex barked or growled playfully, Milo would let out his own high-pitched meow, attempting to mimic the deeper growls of his canine friends. It wasn't a perfect imitation, but it was clear that Milo was trying. One afternoon after a particularly fun play session in the yard, Milo did something that both startled and amused Emma. Rex had picked up a stick, dropped it in front of Luna, and the two dogs began a game of tug-of-war. Milo, ever the curious kitten, watched with wide eyes. Then, without any hesitation, he scampered over to the stick, grabbed it with his mouth, and tugged at it with all his might. Rex and Luna paused, momentarily confused by the sight, before both dogs happily resumed their tug-of-war, with Milo now tugging along beside them. Emma, watching from the window, couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. There in her backyard was a kitten playing tug-of-war with two German shepherds like it was the most natural thing in the world. Over the next few weeks, Milo's behavior became even more dog-like. He would chase after balls that Emma tossed, bringing them back to her with surprising determination. At first, she thought it was a fluke, but soon it became clear that Milo was getting the hang of it. He was fetching. A cat fetching. Emma smiled to herself, marveling at how seamlessly he had blended into the rhythm of her home and her dogs' lives. It wasn't just playtime where Milo adopted dog-like tendencies. Every time Emma called Rex and Luna inside, Milo would stand by the door waiting impatiently. When the dogs would bark excitedly at the doorbell, Milo would dart over to join in, his little tail flicking excitedly. The kitten, who had once been an orphaned, helpless creature, was now a full-fledged member of the pack. It was as if he had always been meant to be there. Emma knew, in that moment, that this wasn't just a simple rescue. Milo had become a part of something much bigger, something that, with every day that passed, seemed more and more extraordinary. As Milo grew older, his transformation into a dog-like figure seemed to accelerate. His natural curiosity, combined with the guidance and example of Rex and Luna, meant that every day was a new opportunity for him to adopt more canine behaviors. The line between cat and dog had started to blur, and it was becoming increasingly clear that Milo didn't see himself as a cat at all. Instead, he was one of the dogs, and nothing would convince him otherwise. One of the first signs of Milo's deeper immersion into the dog world came when he started to follow Rex and Luna during their morning routine. Every day, without fail, the dogs would eagerly wait by the front door, their tails wagging in anticipation for their daily walk. Rex, the ever-dominant one, would bark in excitement, while Luna bounced around, her energy contagious. At first, Milo had watched from the sidelines, uncertain of what exactly was happening. But as the dogs eagerly strained against their leashes, Milo began to mimic them. One day, Emma opened the door to take Rex and Luna on their walk, and to her surprise, Milo darted past her, racing toward the door with the same enthusiasm as the dogs. He meowed excitedly, tail straight and eyes wide, as if he too was ready to join the pack. At first, Emma hesitated, unsure of what to do. Could a kitten really go on a walk with two German shepherds? But before she could stop him, Milo bounded ahead, chasing after Rex and Luna down the path, his little legs moving with surprising speed. What followed was nothing short of heartwarming. While Rex and Luna trotted along, Milo kept pace, his small body darting through the grass. He was clumsy at first, stumbling a few times, but he never gave up. Every few steps, he would look up at the dogs as if seeking reassurance, and they, in turn, slowed down just enough for him to catch up. By the time the walk was over, Milo had made it to the end of the street and back, his little tail held high with pride. Emma couldn't help but smile. Milo wasn't just a kitten anymore, he was part of the team. That evening, after a bath to remove the dirt from his fur, Milo settled down between Rex and Luna on the couch. It was clear that he felt at home, and the dogs seemed to accept him as an equal. They gently nudged him with their noses, as if to say, "Well done, little one." The days that followed were filled with even more antics that would leave Emma in stitches. Milo began to act as though he understood the rules of being a dog. When Rex barked, Milo would give a little meow in response, trying to mimic the sound. When Luna would roll on her back and kick her legs in playful abandon, Milo would join in, trying his best to follow suit. It was as though he had truly embraced his new identity, and Emma couldn't help but marvel at the uncanny bond between the kitten and the dogs. But the most striking change of all came when Milo began to exhibit other dog-like behaviors that no one could have predicted. During meal times, while Rex and Luna waited patiently by their food bowls, Milo began to sit quietly beside them, watching as they ate. One evening, Emma dropped a piece of kibble, and before she could pick it up, Milo darted over, grabbed it with his mouth, and ran it back to his spot, his movements surprisingly efficient. Milo had learned how to fetch food just like the dogs, eagerly participating in the ritual as though it was the most normal thing in the world. Milo's bond with Rex and Luna had transcended friendship. It had become a way of life. They weren't just his companions, they were his family. And to Milo, there was no such thing as a cat or a dog. There was only the pack. By the time Milo reached 6 months old, his dog-like behavior had become so ingrained that it seemed entirely natural. There was no question in his mind that he was part of the pack, not just a cat living with 2 dogs. Every day, Milo displayed more and more canine traits, some of which even surprised Emma. The kitten who had been brought in out of the storm had, in a sense, become the dog he'd always been meant to be. When Emma would call Rex and Luna inside after their walks, Milo would stand by the door, waiting for his cue. He would dart out eagerly, his little paws clicking against the floor as he tried to match the larger dog's pace. His tail would wag, though it looked more like an excited flick than a full-on wag, while he barked, well, meowed with a growl mixed in, at the squirrels in the yard or the passing cars. The cat's traditional aloofness had completely disappeared, replaced by a friendly enthusiasm that mirrored the energy of the 2 dogs. It was during one of these walks that Emma had to admit, once and for all, that Milo didn't just think he was a dog. He truly was one, in his own unique way. As the trio of dogs and cat made their way down the street, neighbors stopped to stare. Rex and Luna walked confidently ahead, while Milo trotted along with them, his little body trying its best to keep up. A passing jogger looked down at the curious sight of a cat keeping pace with 2 large dogs, then at Emma, who was trying to suppress her laughter. "Milo's really one of them now, huh?" the jogger said, shaking his head in disbelief. Emma smiled and nodded, her eyes soft with affection as she watched the small cat prancing along beside the much larger dogs. He's part of the pack. And it was true. The more time passed, the more it became obvious that Milo's identity had completely shifted. He wasn't just the kitten who had once been alone in a storm. He was now a dog, in all but his name. He'd learned the rhythm of life in a pack, from the way Rex and Luna barked in excitement when the mailman arrived to the way they jumped into the car without hesitation for a trip to the park. Milo would follow them every step of the way, often attempting to jump into the car alongside them, as if he had a full understanding of the process. On one particularly memorable trip to the park, Emma let the dogs off their leashes, as they loved to run free and chase after tennis balls. Rex and Luna sprinted ahead, their speed unmatched. To Emma's surprise, Milo darted after them, determined to keep up. As Rex and Luna returned with the ball, Milo, without any prompting, grabbed another ball and brought it back to her, exactly as the dogs had been taught. The sight of the tiny cat, proudly trotting back with a tennis ball in his mouth, was almost too much for Emma to process. How had her kitten gone from being a frightened little thing to this confident, self-assured creature who thought he was a dog? It was a moment that cemented it in Emma's mind. Milo wasn't confused about his identity. He had chosen this path. He had chosen to be a part of Rex and Luna's world, and in doing so, he had become an inseparable part of their lives. To him, being a dog was just the way of things, and nothing else made sense. In Milo's world, there was no question about it. He was a dog, and nothing would ever change that. And in the eyes of Rex, Luna, and Emma, that was perfectly fine. He was part of the family, just as he was. As Milo grew older, his dog-like behavior continued to evolve, and every day brought new moments that would melt Emma's heart and have her laughing in disbelief. It wasn't just that Milo was mimicking the dogs. He was becoming more like them in ways that no one could have predicted. His antics were not only amusing but incredibly endearing, making it impossible for anyone who knew him to see him as anything other than a dog at heart. One of the most charming developments was Milo's ability to participate in the daily rituals of his pack. Every morning, Rex and Luna would eagerly wait by the door for their walk, their tails wagging in anticipation. Now, Milo was right there with them, sitting in front of the door, his tiny body vibrating with excitement. Whenever Emma opened the door, Milo would dart outside, joining Rex and Luna on their morning stroll around the neighborhood. He was still small compared to the German shepherds, but he kept up with them, his tiny legs pumping furiously to match their strides. Neighbors began to stop and stare as the trio of dogs and one very determined cat made their way down the block. Some would smile and wave, others would stop to ask Emma if they were seeing things. Did that cat just walk alongside the dogs? One neighbor asked incredulously. Emma would chuckle, nodding. Yep, that's Milo. He thinks he's a dog. It wasn't just during walks that Milo was a source of amusement. During playtime in the yard, he would often engage in games that were meant for dogs, not cats. One day, while Rex and Luna were happily playing tug-of-war with a rope, Milo dashed in, grabbed the rope with his mouth, and tried to tug it away. The sight of a kitten pulling with all his might, sandwiched between two giant dogs, was so absurd that Emma couldn't stop laughing. Rex and Luna, ever the good-natured dogs, didn't even bat an eye. They simply adjusted their grip, allowing Milo to continue pulling with them. It became clear that Milo didn't just want to be part of the game, he wanted to lead it. His energy was infectious. He'd often grab a ball, run after it with a burst of excitement, and return it to Emma in the same manner Rex and Luna had been trained to do. Of course, his little fetch technique wasn't perfect. Milo's version of retrieving a ball often involved him pawing at it until it rolled just a few inches away, but Emma didn't mind. It was the effort that counted. His dedication was impressive, and his willingness to dive into any activity the dogs were doing was something that always brought a smile to her face. There were also the quieter moments that made Milo's presence even more meaningful. One evening, after a particularly energetic play session, Milo curled up between Rex and Luna on the couch. The three of them formed a perfect, peaceful trio, with Rex's head resting on Milo's back and Luna sprawled out beside them. It was a sight that always warmed Emma's heart. She would often sit down next to them, her fingers gently running through the fur of all three animals. Milo had a way of making the house feel more like a family, more like a home. Milo's transformation from an orphaned kitten into a playful, loyal member of the pack wasn't just heartwarming, it was also endlessly entertaining. The humor and joy he brought to Emma's life was unmatched, and she couldn't help but feel grateful every time she looked at her three pets, who had turned her house into a place filled with laughter and love. But it wasn't just the funny moments that made Milo so special, it was his loyalty and his heart. As Emma watched him try his hardest to fit in, she realized that Milo's love for his family wasn't just about imitation. It was about connection. He wasn't copying the dogs. He was bonding with them in a way that was completely unique to him. And every time Milo did something that made Emma smile, she felt an even deeper sense of gratitude for the little kitten who had been raised by two German shepherds, and who had, without a doubt, become a dog in every way that mattered. As the months passed, it became clear to everyone who knew Milo that his bond with Rex and Luna was something extraordinary. He wasn't just a kitten raised by two German shepherds. He had become an inseparable part of their pack. His loyalty to the dogs and to Emma was unwavering, and it wasn't just the typical bond between pets and their owner. Milo's connection to the dogs ran deeper than that. It was a mutual understanding, a relationship built on respect and shared experiences that only grew stronger over time. Rex, the older shepherd, had always been a natural protector. His instincts were sharp, and he kept a watchful eye on Milo, as though he knew that it was his job to look out for the little cat. Milo, in turn, had adopted many of Rex's protective traits. Whenever they were outside, Milo would always position himself near Rex and Luna, as though keeping watch over them in his own small way. On one occasion, Emma and her pets were walking through the park when a group of loud, rowdy kids came running toward them. Luna barked excitedly, but Rex immediately stepped forward, positioning himself between the kids and the rest of the pack, his body stiff with alertness. To everyone's surprise, Milo darted to the front just behind Rex. He didn't meow or try to chase the kids, but he stood there, looking up at them with a quiet determination. It was as if he was ready to stand beside Rex, ready to protect his family, just like the big dog. Emma's heart swelled as she realized that Milo wasn't just imitating Rex. He was genuinely adopting the traits that made Rex such a good protector. Luna, too, played a vital role in Milo's development. The younger dog, always playful and full of energy, had a special way of bringing out Milo's mischievous side. Luna's playful nips at Milo would often prompt him to engage in their version of chase, where the two of them would run around the yard together, with Milo surprisingly fast for his size. Luna's playful nature was a perfect match for Milo's curiosity, and the two of them would often explore the yard together, sniffing around bushes, darting between trees, and investigating every new scent. But it wasn't just during playtime that Milo's loyalty shone through. When Emma was having a rough day or feeling down, it was Milo who would curl up beside her, nuzzling her for comfort. It was as though he could sense her emotions, just as Rex and Luna could. On several occasions, Emma had found herself sitting on the couch, feeling a bit overwhelmed by the demands of daily life. But as soon as Milo hopped up beside her, resting his tiny head on her lap and purring softly, the stress seemed to melt away. He wasn't just a cat, he was a source of calm, a reminder of the joy that came from unconditional love and the simple pleasures of life. Milo's loyalty was also evident in the way he responded when one of his pack members was upset or in distress. If Rex or Luna seemed anxious or out of sorts, Milo would instinctively go to them, sitting by their side as if to offer reassurance. It was as if he understood, on a deeper level, the emotions of his canine companions, even though he had been raised by them. His ability to comfort them, as they had once comforted him, spoke volumes about the bond they had formed. Emma, watching this quiet exchange between her pets, felt an overwhelming sense of pride. She had never imagined that a little kitten, rescued from a storm and raised by two dogs, could become such an integral part of her family. Milo had not only learned from Rex and Luna, he had become their equal. Their loyalty to one another was unspoken, but it was powerful. It was a bond that transcended species, a bond that would remain unbroken no matter what challenges life might bring. In Milo's eyes, Rex and Luna were not just dogs, they were family. And in Rex and Luna's eyes, Milo was not just a cat. He was their little brother, their teammate, their packmate. Together, they had formed a family that was unlike any other, one that would continue to grow stronger with each passing day. As the years went by, Milo's life continued to unfold alongside Rex and Luna in a harmonious blend of dog-like adventures and moments of quiet companionship. What had started as a curious and unlikely bond between a kitten and two German shepherds had blossomed into something that felt almost magical. In the eyes of everyone who knew them, they weren't just pets, they were a family. And their bond was stronger than anything Emma could have ever anticipated. Milo, now a confident young adult, had fully embraced his role in the pack. He had grown into a beautiful cat, sleek and elegant, but his dog-like behaviors never wavered. If anything, they had become more pronounced. Every morning, as soon as Emma reached for her shoes to take the dogs for their walk, Milo would appear at the door, tail twitching, eyes bright with anticipation. His routine had become the same as Rex and Luna's. He would eagerly follow the dogs out the door, joining them on their daily stroll through the neighborhood. On their walks, neighbors would stop to chat, marveling at the sight of the trio, the two towering German shepherds and their loyal cat companion, who trotted along beside them as if he were their equal. Sometimes neighbors would comment, "Is that really a cat walking with them?" And Emma, smiling, would nod. "That's Milo. He's one of the dogs." And it was true. Milo had earned his place in the pack in every way. He no longer tried to imitate the dogs. He was one of them, in spirit and in action. Even though Milo was a cat, he had never been interested in the typical activities that other cats enjoyed. He had never cared for climbing trees or stalking small animals in the yard. Instead, he reveled in the activities that Rex and Luna loved most. He enjoyed running through the yard, playing fetch, and chasing after the frisbee when Emma threw it. He'd mastered the art of catching it mid-air, albeit in his own unique way. His tiny paws would bat at the frisbee before landing awkwardly, but that didn't stop him. He was determined, and the other dogs would sometimes watch in amusement as Milo tried to match their skill. The pack had also grown to depend on Milo in other ways. Rex, as the oldest and most protective of the three, had a special bond with him. He would often nudge Milo, guiding him to safety if they encountered anything unexpected during their walks, whether it was a strange noise, another dog, or even a sudden storm. Milo, though smaller and less physically imposing, seemed to sense when Rex was concerned and would walk closer to him, offering quiet support as if he understood the importance of standing side by side. Luna, the playful and energetic shepherd, had also become Milo's constant companion. They were often inseparable in the yard, with Luna darting back and forth, daring Milo to chase her. Milo, with his sharp reflexes and dog-like determination, never backed down from the challenge. And just like the dogs, Milo had developed his own way of communicating. Instead of mewing like a typical cat, Milo would make a variety of soft growls, barks, and whines, blending in seamlessly with his packmates. One of the most special things about their relationship, however, was how they comforted one another. Whenever one of them was sick or feeling unwell, the others would always notice. If Rex was recovering from an injury, Milo would curl up beside him, purring softly, offering warmth and comfort. When Luna was anxious during a storm, Milo would sit next to her, offering his presence and calming her fears with his steady companionship. It wasn't just about the games or the walks. It was about being there for each other, no matter what. It wasn't lost on Emma how extraordinary this bond was. It wasn't just about the pets. It was about the unconditional love, trust, and companionship they shared. Milo, the kitten who had been saved on that stormy night, had grown into a member of a pack that defied the boundaries of species. And in return, Rex and Luna had shown him what it meant to be family, what it meant to love without question, without hesitation. Milo's life, once uncertain and lonely, had been transformed by the love and loyalty of two German shepherds, and in return, he had given them his heart, completely and without reserve. Together, they had become a family like no other. Their bond was proof that sometimes the most unexpected relationships can turn out to be the most beautiful. As time moved on, the pack that Emma had lovingly nurtured continued to grow, not in numbers, but in strength. Milo, Rex, and Luna had become more than just pets. They were a testament to the deep and unbreakable bond that transcended species, a family in the truest sense of the word. The years had only deepened their connection, and every day seemed to bring new moments that filled Emma's heart with joy and gratitude. Milo, now fully matured, had solidified his place as the beloved member of the pack. His once awkward kitten antics had transformed into graceful, confident movements that blended seamlessly with Rex and Luna's majestic strides. They no longer seemed like mismatched companions. Milo was one of the dogs, in every sense of the word. And despite his small size, he had earned a profound respect from his canine companions. Whether it was during their daily walks, playtime in the yard, or quiet moments on the couch, Milo fit perfectly into the rhythm of their lives. Emma often marveled at how natural it all seemed. Rex and Luna, despite being such different animals, had accepted Milo without question from the very beginning. They had shown him the ropes, how to walk, how to play, and how to love unconditionally. In turn, Milo had become the glue that held them all together, his presence in the pack a constant reminder of how far they had come together. There were times, particularly during moments of quiet reflection, when Emma would sit on the porch, watching as the trio played in the yard, their silhouettes bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. Rex and Luna would chase each other around, their powerful bodies moving effortlessly, while Milo, his little legs kicking up dust, kept right up with them. It was a sight that never failed to fill Emma with warmth, her once quiet house now echoing with the sound of joy, love, and laughter. The neighborhood had grown accustomed to the sight of the three animals together. The curious glances had shifted to smiles of familiarity, with neighbors often commenting on how well the trio got along. One of Emma's friends had once joked, "I've never seen a dog act more like a cat, and a cat act more like a dog." It was a light-hearted observation, but it captured the essence of their relationship perfectly. Milo, in every way that mattered, had become a dog. He had learned from the best, and Rex and Luna had embraced him as one of their own. It was during one particularly rainy evening, as thunder rumbled in the distance, that the depth of their bond truly struck Emma. Luna, who had always been a little skittish during storms, was trembling slightly as the thunder grew louder. Rex, ever the protector, was sitting by her side, his large body acting as a shield. But it was Milo who took the lead in that moment. He walked over to Luna, nuzzled her gently, and sat beside her, his small body a quiet comfort. Rex looked at Milo with a soft gaze, as if acknowledging that this small cat, who had once been so vulnerable, had become a key player in the pack's emotional well-being. Emma watched the scene unfold, her heart full of gratitude. Milo had not only learned from Rex and Luna, he had given back in ways that were deeply meaningful. He had given them his loyalty, his affection, and his unwavering presence. And in return, they had given him a family that had nurtured him, protected him, and loved him unconditionally. As the storm raged on outside, the three animals huddled together on the couch, with Milo nestled between Rex and Luna. Emma joined them, sitting down beside them, her hand resting gently on Milo's soft fur. It was in moments like these that Emma truly understood the depth of what they had. The bond between her pets wasn't just a quirky, heartwarming story, it was a testament to the power of love and connection. In that moment, surrounded by her beloved pack, Emma knew one thing for certain. Milo had been exactly where he was meant to be all along. Not as a stray kitten, alone and afraid, but as a member of a family that had brought him into their world with open hearts. And in return, Milo had become more than just a pet. He had become a part of something that could never be broken. Milo had been raised by 2 German shepherds, yes, but in the end, he had shown them what it meant to be a family. And that, more than anything, was the most beautiful transformation of all.